What's up, Whooper gang? I've got Xaria here to my left, and it's been a little while since the two of us have had a chance to chat. So if you don't know, Xaria is a local competitor. She's played in, sort of all levels of events that I can think of. Did you compete in Worlds this year?
I did compete at Worlds this year.
Yeah, so you're a very accomplished player at the moment. Do you want to introduce yourself a little? Maybe you can share some more about yourself?
I think the standings actually updated this morning, and I think I'm actually third now. So that it won't last. That does mean for at least another few weeks I get to say I'm the number one woman.
That's right.
But
let alone third on the rankings.
It's just been a very good start to the season. I stream on Twitch. I'm a member of the Raptor Games team.
Yep.
We've been working quite hard, and I play a lot of Pokemon, believe it or not. So what about you?
What about me? So, what about me? I'm just some live streamer here on Twitch. Talk about Pokemon.
A number one Australian TCG.
Yeah, a number one until somebody like Henry Brand decides to turn their stream on and once a year or however frequently he decides to stream here on Twitch. Do we still count James? Do we still count James?
You're number one in my heart.
Well, that counts for a lot, to be honest. So, all right, very good. Yeah. Look, so now that we've introduced ourselves, I think what I wanted to do is talk about how we've both been competing in tournaments recently. And I'll ask you to go through maybe your approach, your method, and all of that sort of thing. So I think it's good to frame the next few topics, first of all, with just a quick discussion. How do you get ready for events? And I'm not talking about having a shower in the morning and making sure you eat breakfast. I'm talking about, testing, deck selection, all that sort of stuff.
Well, there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's probably a lot more work than what people realize. At the moment, pretty much every day for me is testing. I'm either at the shop testing with Eden, or I'm at home testing or thinking about what could work, what could not. And the main approach is just doing what's right, I guess, and thinking about your deck and saying, well, if this isn't working, why isn't it working? How can we make it work? If it doesn't work, we need to stop doing it, etc., etc. And it's just that it's a lot of testing. And it's really quite a team effort. Like, it's not just me, it's Eden, it's all the members of the Raptor team who come in and test quite regularly, and we work really well together. I think at the moment we've got 8 or 9 people regularly going to events, and between those 8 or 9 people, we've got 1,200 points between us. So we're definitely doing that, and really it's just we'll sit down, we'll play a game, play several games. It will be like, okay, this felt good, this didn't feel good, or we'll go to events and we'll play the same 60 or the same 59, which is what Eden and I have been doing the last few weeks. We've been on identical lists for pretty much every event, maybe 1 or 2 cards different here and there. And we've been sharing the information that we actually come across. So it's like, if I've an X player and I realize oh damn, I'm really struggling to find a turn 3 KO in this match or something, then I can go to Eden and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, you might want to look out for it. That's a really bad example, but that's the kind of thing that we would do during events as well. And then there's also that same discussion that happens before event. Recently, the major one has been, how do we deal with Charizard? Because Charizard was a matchup that was giving me a lot of problems. So we sat down for about 2 weeks. We were just, basically it was, can you hit me with Charizard? And it would be a best of 3 Charizard. And it would either go well, it would go bad, and we'd try and figure out the lines. And it's just a lot of work. So pretty much every day at this point, and I do enjoy it. It's pretty tiring though sometimes. But yeah, that's the main way I approach events, is just, for me, it's repetition, and also just making sure we have that information The other thing I do is the stats. So people like to kind of throw limitless events to the side and say, oh, well, it's online events. Anyone's playing. It's random people. The issue with that is that limitless events, yeah, you can say maybe that it's not all top players and there's some players who aren't super great and just playing for fun and playing random stuff. But it does give you at least a baseline stat. You don't have any baseline stats on anything without that. So you can look at limitless, you can look at meta share, you can then look at win rate, you can work out what decks are winning into what, and you can try and figure out why. You don't want to use those stats as a be-all and end-all. This is what we have to do. We have to do this. You kind of just use those stats as a baseline to work off of. And it's a similar thing with deck building. I think you mentioned earlier you were playing a local Japanese list, I think it was.
Yeah, it was, and this was a limitless list. So just to meander a little bit into my method here, it was mainly a source of necessity, right? I didn't have the time to grind out a list that suited me perfectly. I was basically just looking at my weekend schedule and going, I've got time to play in a tournament this weekend. I'm going to pick a list. I hadn't even bought all the cards yet, so I was a bit limited in what I could do. What I ended up doing was I have an idea in my head about how I want to play the game and how I want to play the deck that I wanted to play. I wanted to play Charizard with Dust Noir, and I wanted to play a list that sort of like hits a few criteria for me, right? I didn't want to play any of these nonsense 2-1-2 lists of Charizard. I didn't want to play anything too risky, but I did want to play Dust Noir. And I didn't want to use like anything that was a bit like too weird, right? And I went through like a few lists that proved themselves by placing very well in online tournaments, and I settled on a list piloted by a Japanese player in what I believe was a late night limitless tournament, and it just ticked all the boxes for me. It had cards like Thornton, and importantly, it had the Hero's Cape, which is what I wanted to try. And it worked well for me for a couple of tournaments.
I changed my deck building method about 3 months ago.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit earlier after that. Normally, I would just get deck lists from top players that I know, which I still do a little bit. I think the initial Raging Bolt list that I had was from Cal, and then we took that and we changed it into what it is now. But what I've been doing recently for deck building is, do you know the website? I think it's Pokémon Book or something.
Yes.
Pokémon Book, all the Japanese events, and I would use.
I love following their Twitter. They share lists all the time, so I highly recommend them.
Absolutely highly recommend their website as well. What I do is I use the deck building function in Limitless, and I'll go through every single list from, say, I think Shrouded Fable was the last one that was big, or maybe the one before that. Go through all of the deck lists for a certain deck from that time period, and I would put one of each card from all of those decks into the deck building software. So I'd end up with like 120 singleton deck. And then I would go back through the list and I would look at, okay, what are most players playing in terms of count? What seems to be something that everyone's playing? Is it justifiable? And then I would work back from there and end up with a list that's, close to the 60 cards. And that's how I have been. Sorry?
I'm similar. When I build decks, I'll build like a 75. In PTCGO, I would just go. I would put like 100 cards in, and then I'd weed out the cards that I couldn't fit.
Yeah, I think
caps you at 75, but it's the same deal. I just go over the count, and then I work backwards until I've got 60. Yeah.
I think that's an absolutely fantastic way to do it, because even ideas that seem bad, it gives you the opportunity to actually test them out. So
you saying you build out like a 100 card deck and then try it in the Limitless Simulator and figure out what you liked?
I don't play the 100-card deck. I don't play Pokemon Commander. I'll work back to a list that's like maybe 65 or 70 cards, or maybe even less than that. And that has like the basic counts of what I want, and then like figure out what really, really felt good, what really didn't feel good, and then twist and turn. And if there's something that I haven't seen that I want to try, I'll throw that in, see if it works. I think that's a very good method for deck building, because it gives you a lot of, no idea what to call it, but it gives you a lot of like vision into what other people are doing and what people that are doing successfully are doing at the moment, which I think is really important, especially because Japan is obviously a format ahead of us. So you can actually get ahead and start planning for the next format really, really early, which I think is also a really good bonus.
Yeah, so there's like a few things that I want to touch on there then. I think that it's good to look at a variety of lists that each have like results to back them up too. And it's just like a good reminder that there's not necessarily a set 60. Some decks, some archetypes will feel that way. There was a Chen Pao list a couple of formats ago that just seemed to dominate. Like that deck seemed absolutely solved. But even within archetypes like that, people are trying different things all the time. I think it was like the Indonesian or one of the Southeast Asian countries where their national event was won by a Chen Pao of the Dunsparce. Nobody had played it that way.
Yeah.
And just things like that. So it's a good reminder to not get too locked in. And not just like locked in, but also not afraid of trying different ideas and not being afraid of making cuts that seem sacrilegious in a way. It's like how could you consider cutting to 3 Buddy Poffin or ideas like that? So
well, in that same vein, it's also once you have a list, don't feel the need that you need to keep playing that exact 60. I think Eden and I have been playing. So I've won the last 3 cups I went to. The only 3 cups I've won, by the way, ever, which is crazy.
That's awesome.
And I'm pretty certain that maybe, I think the last 2 cups, the list was the exact 60 as the day before, but like we've changed 1 or 2 cards that most people would be like, oh, that card is just a card. Like Vacuum being in or out of the list has been an argument that Eden and I have been having. I am a massive supporter of Vacuum, and Eden keeps wanting to cut it. But even before that, we were playing Raging Bolt, like leading into when we switched to Sinistcha Bolt. We were playing the Slitherwing that does 120 and 92 itself. At one point, I think we almost went to 4 fighting energy because of that. There was times when we weren't playing that, and we were playing Sandy Shocks, and there was just little changes in between almost every single tournament. It wasn't like, oh, we've got a list, let's stick with it. It was, let's get a list and then improve it as much as we can. Because the original list that I got from Cal, and the list doesn't look anything like how it was when I got it from Cal, because it has evolved so much over the last like 2 months or so.
Yeah, and deck building is like making a sculpture, right? You got to start with something, and then you pick away at it, you work at it until it becomes a statue of exactly what you want to play.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. I think it's very artistic. I felt the same way a little bit with Lost Tina back when Lost Tina was around.
Yeah.
People would make fun of me because, you know, I am an ex-chess player, and in chess it's like, oh, chess is beautiful, you can play it, it's beautiful. I do believe that. I think chess is beautiful. I also think Pokemon is a very beautiful game, especially around deck building. It's artistic, and there's a lot of creativity, and I think people who don't think that it's beautiful and don't have that creativity are never going to go anywhere with the game at all, because they just can't respect the game for being beautiful. Really weird.
I made a video a while ago that is a bit more like artsy than anything, and it's about deck building in Pokemon and like self-expression and stuff like that. And I think it's a really cool aspect of the game. You won't get awarded championship points for building a really cool deck, but
well, sometimes you will.
But it can be part of the equation for sure.
The only other beautiful thing in the world is my partner.
Yeah.
You have to say that. There is another beautiful thing in the world.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
I want to wind back a little bit to one of your previous one of the previous things that you mentioned, and you were talking about your method of just like how you iterate on ideas, and you were talking about as you play more and more, you start to recognize these things that keep happening, and they're kind of like problems that you need to solve, right? So you mentioned you were trying to solve the situation with Charizard with the deck that you were testing. So
I had nightmares about Charizard. There was a cup at CTC. I played against Natalie in the semifinals.
Yeah.
She was on Zard. I lost in game 3. Very tight match. This was before we had Sinistcha. And then I think the week after that, or maybe the week before that, or the week after, at some point in time, there was a cup at Toowoomba. And I started 2-0, I think. And then I hit Zard and I lost 2-0. And then in round 4, I hit another Zard and I lost 2-0.
Yeah.
And at that point, my mental state versus Zard was not good.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that was testing with me at the time, so Eden, Renee, anyone that was like around Raptor, would know that Zard was I am very much a confidence player. And during that period of time, if my opponent, and still today a little bit, I'm still very scared of Zard with our list. If someone flips over a Zard, I already feel like I'm on the back foot. So part of what we had to try and do, and the story behind Sinistcha is interesting because I did not know the card existed. I was having this was the Friday before, I think, the Blizzmore Cup, so the night before, and I was having another mental breakdown. That's an over-exaggeration. A mental breakdown about Zard to Eden.
And I'm like, players were allowed to over.
We're allowed to over-exaggerate, and I was like, we need to find a grass Pokemon that can KO Charizard. Yeah. And someone suggested Iron Leaves. The problem, like a single prize grass Pokemon, I should say. The problem with Iron Leaves is that it only does 160. So for you to try and one-hit KO with Zard with that, you have to have a Vitality Band, which there's no way of ever putting Vitality Band in a deck. I think the card is terrible. But I was just flicking through. I went on Pokemon TCG Live. I was just sitting there going, next. Eden was like, hey, can you get this deck and play me with it? And I was like, no, I'm looking at cards. Next. And then I was like, that's interesting. There's a Sinistcha that does 70 damage. You discard grass and it does up to 210.
Yep.
And Eden was like, but it's a stage 1. And I was like, but it does 210. He was like, okay, we can test it. And then we test it. We were like, hey, this is actually insane because it KOs Fez, it KOs Lumineon, it KOs Squawk. It's not only good in the Zard matchup, it's good in the mirror. It's good against Roaring Moon. There's so many different applications for it. So I guess having that problem that was bugging me was part of the reason we were able to find a semi-solution. I still think Zard is a 50-50, but it was a 40. So yeah, I mean, it was a 40-60 before, if not worse. So
yeah, I bring it up because I think that being in tune with your own feelings about anything is good, and it's equally applicable in Pokemon and in deck building. When people show me deck lists and it's clear that they're kind of new to the idea of playing Pokemon cards, like they've seen all the decks and they've gone, well, my favorite Pokemon are Lucario and Garchomp and Togekiss, and they just smush it all together into a cool Pokemon sandwich, and they show it to me, and they're like, what should I do with this deck? And what I say to them is, I say, when you're playing a game of Pokemon cards with this deck, when you draw a certain card from your deck and you feel really good about seeing it, what card is it? What do you see? And
Boss's Orders.
and okay, so that's a good example. Boss's Orders, you might feel really good when you see that card. Maybe you bump it up to a third copy in your list or something like that. I think like the more competitive that you are, it starts flipping. Instead of being like, I feel really good when I see this card. It's what card has done nothing for me, or what deck am I struggling against? And those are that's what you have to solve as a more competitive player. It's the negative feelings, unfortunately.
I think on that similar sort of trend, the mental game is so important as well. It's something that I really struggle with. That confidence needs to be there, and I don't always have that. I think I also think that your attitude and approach to the game has to be very, very good. I think mine used to be quite bad, and I'm still working on it. Just being distracted during games, or not really caring, or just like, oh, whatever, it'll be fine, or, getting really tilted and upset. And I changed my approach recently, just before I started doing well this season, actually, is when I changed my approach. When I got the Raging Bolt list from Cal, I played it like 2 days later at a GGB, and I didn't do great. And I didn't react very well to that, and I should have reacted better. I reacted pretty poorly, and I think that when I realized how negative that was for my own game, I was like, okay, I need to completely reevaluate how I actually approach the game. And it was kind of like a switch flicked, or whatever they say. I was like, okay, I just need to lock in, play the game, play as accurately as possible. It doesn't really matter what happens. If I play better than my opponent, 90% of the time I will win. So I have to try and play better than my opponent. Nothing else should matter outside of that. I just have to lock in and focus on that. And then it's just, okay, I need to play the best deck with the best deck building I can with the best testing. And if I lose, we say GG, go next and win the next one.
Yeah.
And I think switching over into that attitude really, really helped me.
It's tough to separate your self-worth from the result of the game that you just played. It can be. And
I struggle with it immensely because I think I tie a lot of my self-worth to Pokemon because I have been playing it for almost half my life. And I'm only 20, and it's pretty much my entire life at the moment. So like, I agree, it's very hard to separate that. And I think that players have to learn to detach themselves during the game and simply be like, okay, what would a computer do? What would a computer do? And then, you're going to get emotional if you lose or if you don't. Like, sometimes you will get emotional. But during the game, you have to be in the moment. You have to lock in, literally, to use that term.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess, like, for me, I've been playing for so long that I kind of, I just always take every tournament or game that I play one game at a time, one turn at a time.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, we'll joke on stream when I'm playing a game, and I'll make a choice that's like questionable, and I'll just say, well, that's turn 6's Vice's problem. I don't have to worry about it right now. And sometimes, for better or worse, that I will then have to face the consequences of my actions. But yeah.
I think a similar thing happened last time we did one of these. We were playing.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think you grabbed Klefki or something.
Yeah.
And you were like, "Oh, that's a problem for later."
Yeah. And so when things don't work out, I just take it as a learning opportunity. Yeah. I'm not perfect. I cannot think about the game to like the kinds of degrees that are required to be a top 10 player in Australia, or at least I have to mediate that with a lot of other competing priorities in my life. So I guess I just lean on my
experience. Doing pretty good. I think you're doing pretty good. You've had some very good results recently. So
yeah. And look, why don't we segue into that? How has your recent tournament results gone? After talking about the roller coaster of emotions that you've been through in various events, how have you been?
Well, the GGB Cup, the first one, was not good. Like, it was, in the sense that I lost the winning in. I didn't react very well to losing the winning in. And realistically, I just had the wrong approach. I think I went to Max and Natalie and said, should I ID to guarantee top 16 points? And they said no, because it won't help your BFL, which is correct. And I ignored that and asked my opponent if they wanted to ID. And they said no. So, and I all of a sudden felt very, very unconfident. And then I lost the game. I got 2-0'd.
Yeah.
Since then, it's been really good. The next day, I won a challenge. Then week after that, I top 4'd a cup. That was when I lost to Natalie. That's when my Zard problem started.
Yeah, customer too, not to mention.
Yeah, I have a 1-12 record against Natalie.
Yeah, mine's worse than that.
And I have paired her twice in round 3 of Perth Regionals, 2 years in a row, which is just weird.
My loss streak my loss streak started in Regionals top 8 a couple of years ago, and I haven't been able to beat her since.
Yeah. Well, I top 4'd that cup, and the week after that, I think I missed a cup finish there. I think I was 5th place and top cup was 4. But the next day, I think I went and won a challenge at Card House, I think. And then the week after that, I think I top 4'd another cup. I lost to Eden. It was a mirror match, so we didn't really care. So we just like going for it. Nothing was working because it was a mirror, and the mirror is cursed. It was exact 60 as well, so what to do? But I beat Matt and Natalie that day, and that was the first time I beaten Natalie. And that had been something that had really been bugging me for a while. It felt very overwhelming to play against her, and also to play against Matt, who I had a slightly better record against, but it was also pretty abysmal. I managed to beat both of them, and that was a confidence boost. The day after that, I don't remember, but at some point, I don't know, we went to Lismore at some point after that, and I won the Lismore Cup. That was when we switched to Sinistcha Raging Bolt instead of just Raging Bolt. And then this weekend went up to Bundy. I won both cups up there. I think I did some other challenges at some point. I don't really know. I played you at a challenge. It was the winner would win, and I lost you in game 3.
Yeah.
And that game 3 was really cursed as well. I was so annoyed that I couldn't get you because your start was so bad. You were like Manaphy pass, and I was like, I don't have it. Yeah. And then you were like, pass, and I was like, I don't have it. Then you benched a Pokemon, and I KO'd the Manaphy. And you still didn't have it, and you benched another Pokemon, and then eventually somehow you got back into the game because you played better than me. And that's just how it goes.
I've been on the other side of that, in the position that you're in against me, against other players, in like regional day 2 situations, and it just sucks. It's like, I've got this, and it just slips out of your hands. There's just nothing you can do about it. Despite doing everything correctly. You know. Anyway, didn't want to interrupt you to comment on me beating you, but
it was well played. It was well deserved, and you won that challenge, I think, as well. So,
I did, yeah.
Which can segue into how you've been going.
Well, but you're not finished yet because you got more results after that tournament too, right? After that league.
Yeah. Bundaberg. Yeah. That was this weekend. I won both of the cups in Bundaberg.
Beast. Were they?
They weren't. They were on. It was one was on Saturday, one was on Sunday. Ooh. So we drove up on the Friday.
Oh, road
and
trip.
Then we played on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Eden, my lovely partner Renee, and we went up to Bundy on Friday. I actually think I played one of the best games of my life.
Yeah.
In round 2, it was against Gardy.
Yeah.
And I won the first game. It was against Stuart, who's the owner of Unleashed TCG, which is a pretty good store. TCT up there is also a great store. I won the first game with 25 minutes left, and then I think I led Squawk Raging Bolt, and it was pass, essentially for me. I was passing. He was doing whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And somehow I played all of my outs perfectly. I did not draw cards at all, but I was playing to all of my outs, and I managed to eventually just trap enough things in the active. I just kept gusting. He would KO something, take a prize card or 2 prize cards when it wasn't the Sinistcha, and I'd go, okay, gust this. Most of his energy is on the board, so he's burning through his switching stuff. His Turo is prized. So I'm just like, I can't really scoop this. This is a really bad matchup. I'm not confident that I can win a third game here, and a tie is fine for me. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to try and not lose this game. So I somehow managed to get it to time. I had to like switch card monkey damage off the Raging Bolt to make sure that he couldn't have a 3-prize turn on turn 3. It was insane. It was a really fun game. And I think it was one of the best games I ever played, and I didn't take a single prize card. That was a very fun game.
Sometimes the games come to you that way. Yeah. I think one of the important lessons to take away from that story is, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently. So for a while, there were a lot of posts on Twitter that I was seeing from various creators and whoever saying that basically you can't blame bad luck.
No.
And I agree with like some asterisks. Okay, so like some people will throw the example of what if my hand is a basic Pokemon and 6 energies and I draw another energy, where what kind of skill could I employ to get around that? And no, of course, there's nothing you can do. You pass turn and they get donked.
Yeah, it's a statistical anomaly.
Yeah. But what you have to do with a lot of these like bad starts is to do your best. And okay, you might lose anyway despite doing your best, but you will have a percentage of games where it works out because, for example, your opponent isn't able to pull it together. I had that bad start with the Manaphy that you were describing.
Yeah, you had the same sort of situation against me,
But I was bailed out because of perhaps the version of Raging Bolt that you were playing. You have to make some concessions with your list in order to fit the Sinistcha.
Yeah.
And then as a result, I was able to creep my way back in and put myself in a position to win, which if I'd just given up early and not thought about squeezing the small percentage chance, it may have just fell out of my hands because it just cursed my bad luck. So I've been told a few times that I'm pretty unlucky as a player, which I don't know if that's true, but it feels like it because I draw terribly a lot when Eden's drawing fine with the same 60, but I'm fine with that because the deck functions. I think the reason that good players are good is because they can do good things with bad hands. Yeah. Anyone can win with a good hand. Like someone who started playing the game 20 minutes ago, they can win the game with a good hand. But the real question is, can they win the game with a bad hand? And that's why the top players do consistently well, is because they can win the game with a bad hand. And they know their outs. And the other thing I don't... opponent's outs too.
That too, yeah.
Like, so doing very well with a very good, with like a high value hand is also...
Yesterday I was losing game 2 after losing game 1 against Turbo Moon. It was 4 prize cards to 2 and it was my turn. And you would generally just be completely out of it there because it's game 2. And I had no energy on the board. I had nothing that could attack. I had 1 energy on the board. I had an energy on the Raging Bolt. I was like, okay, I have 1 out here. It's Prime Catcher, Fez, Iono, and somehow... no, not even that. I had to kill the Raging Bolt. I don't think there was Fez on board, but it was just, I have to kill the Raging Bolt and Iono, and the Raging Bolt was on the bench. So it has to be Prime Catcher, find all 3 of my Ogerpons, Teal Dance, attach, Prime Catcher, Iono. But it has to be that exact combination. It has to be sequenced perfectly. Otherwise, they just win. And she did have it the turn before. I think she misplayed, which is unfortunate. But I'm very glad that she did because it meant that I didn't lose. But I think the other thing that I really don't like when people say that things are bad luck is if you're consistently drawing bad hands and you're not consistently able to draw out of it, that's not a luck problem, that's a deck problem. And it means that your deck is not built correctly. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. It's like if you play 4 Chien Powers and 56 energy, and you're like, oh my god, I can't find other Qian powers and I keep getting donked. The problem is not that you're getting unlucky. The problem is that you are not playing a deck that can even allow that to happen. Right?
I think
So that's why I don't like
I
luck
think a
thing.
good example of that I think of is whenever I see a deck list from Tord, something that I attribute to him is that he'll include cards like Luminion V a lot to fix the occurrence of those bad starts, and just like a lot of small deck design choices designed to really minimize. It's very easy to remember the games that go very well for you, and it's difficult to make changes to like the ideal flow of your deck in order to account for the bad starts. That's very difficult.
Yeah, I think Eden probably puts it best. He said this multiple times. He said, Pokemon is gambling in the same way poker is.
Yeah.
There is a luck element, there's an RNG element. However, knowing the odds, knowing what the best play is and making the best play is your best option to actually do things or something like that. I don't know exactly what he says, but that's basically what he says. And I think that's kind of where people get it confused with bad luck. Talking about the deck list, I do actually want to look at the deck list at some point as well.
Yeah, we will. So I'll just mention my tournament run very, very briefly,
course,
and then we'll jump into the Raging Bolt as well. So I've had a couple of tournaments in the last couple of weeks. One of them was a league challenge, so this was the one where I took like a few different Charizard lists and I compared them all and I went, this is the one that has the stuff that ticks all my boxes as far as what I want the deck to do or not do or what have you. And I had the cards for as well, which most of the cards. Funny story, at the beginning of that tournament, I was walking around to people and I was saying, hey, do you know what Pokemon Charmander evolves into? Xaria, do you know?
It's Charmeleon.
Charmeleon? Do you have any?
Charmeleon.
Charmeleon?
I think I have some somewhere actually.
Because
we definitely have them at the store.
Because
I have a Charmander right here. I have a 60 HP Charmander right here.
I had this Charmeleon, right? Not the ability one. So I was walking around asking people if they knew what Pokemon Charmander evolved into.
I think I had one somewhere, but I don't know if it's going to be on my desk anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think I do, but it would have been very funny if I did. Actually, I had a similar thing when I first switched to Raging Bolt at the GGB Cup. I was going around the room asking if anyone had a green Ogerpon because I didn't have one. I needed one more. I was going around being like, "Do you have a green Ogerpon by chance?"
The green one. I need the green one.
Now nobody has green Ogerpons because at the store everyone's building Raging Bolt now, so we just don't have green Ogerpon.
Yeah. I need to get some green Ogerpons actually for the new format. Anyway, I got the list built right on time for deck list submission, and I had a really good tournament run. So I chose that league challenge to go to as well because I don't have to worry about pre-reg or anything like that. I just rocked up. It was in the middle of the day. 12 hours before that tournament, I was in the valley clubbing with my wife. That was a lovely experience. So
definitely have not done the same thing ever.
Really glad that the start time was midday so I could get some sleep. It's fantastic. And yeah, like I was able to run with the list, and I can't quite remember the matchups exactly except facing you right at the very end. I think the important thing was that I didn't face Regidrago because in the League Cup that followed the week after, I managed to make top 8. I went undefeated, so I won my first 3 rounds, and I was able to just ID the last 2 rounds to make cut. So I made top 8, faced Regidrago in top 8, and I got blasted 2-0. And the second game was one of those like bad starts, sort of bench a few Pokemon, pass, and I tried my best to stay in it as much as I could. Regidrago is a very good deck. My opponent is somebody who's got a player ID that is older than mine. Very experienced is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, despite my best efforts, it came away. And even playtesting over the table here at home yesterday against Charizard versus Regidrago, it just feels really tough. I could see why, and this is going to be relevant in a second. I could see why people were starting to shift towards decks like Miraidon EX and just quick decks like that could keep up with Regidrago and have those margins and not be punished so hard.
I think the other thing is, sorry.
I was just going to say, it blows to lose to canceling Clone Curum. It just...
Yeah.
And so if you're playing Miraidon, that's less of a problem because you just blast 3 200 and whatever HP Pokemon 3 times to win. So...
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there isn't really much you can do. Like, at the end of the day, there's going to be a winner. Both players are going to try and win, and both players can't win. If both players play perfectly, then it is luck. But I will say probably 90% of the games that I've lost have been my own fault. Probably about 10% have just been, well, I couldn't really do much about it. So it's like, sometimes you just can't get there, and fortunately that's how it goes.
I think you also have to look at things holistically as well. So you're thinking about winning a whole tournament and not just any singular matchup against any singular deck or even any singular player. You're trying to win the whole thing. So you can't, at the moment, there is a pretty healthy balance of different decks that you can play. Things are a bit circular. A deck might seem like a bad choice if its bad matchup turns up in numbers. But if they don't, which for me, across 2 tournaments, I faced Regidrago twice. One of them, they bricked. Like, it was just like really bad for them. They couldn't quite put it together. And then there was the top 8 match that I lost. But because I was able to avoid a matchup that, in my somewhat limited experience, was a bad matchup, then I was able to achieve those results.
I mean, I played Stall to Worlds, right? And I think I auto win 70% of the meta, and 80% of my games are against the other 30%. So
yeah, you play.
Sometimes you hit the matchup roulette, but that's also on me for picking a deck that was so matchup dependent. I kind of took that risk and it didn't pay off, and sometimes that happens.
Yeah, it can be hard to think about rolling the dice, so to speak, when it comes to a tournament like the World Championships, because you only get a very small number of chances in your lifetime as a competitive player to compete in an event like that. But yeah, so you just have to think that, like, if the simulation is run again, maybe, Xaria, you're top 8. Maybe you're the world champion because you put it all on stall and you hit the right matchups and you make the right decisions.
Yeah, I mean, like, we can say that, and statistically it makes sense. But holistically, if you go and look at the event, like, stall didn't do that well, despite the fact that statistically it should have done very well.
Like you're saying, more people should have placed higher if, the odds are...
I think Worlds was a tournament where I relied too heavily on statistics, in the sense that my meta predictions were completely accurate to like 1 or 2%. But I obviously miscalculated somewhere in that deck choice, because like the day 2 conversion rate for Snorlax wasn't that good. So then it's the question of, did all the Snorlax players just happen to get unlucky? Because that doesn't seem entirely likely.
Yeah.
Or whereas it just...
Somebody should rise to the top.
Well, I mean, like, so I was testing with Cal and they were on the edge of like, do we play Snorlax or do we play Guardy? And I was never going to play Guardy. I'd set my sights on Snorlax before even leaving. I was never going to play Guardy because I hadn't played the deck in ages, and it was like, why would I switch to a deck I haven't played the night before? I hit a lot of Lugia, but that's how it goes. I'm happy with how I did.
Yep. So, speaking of being happy with things, I think you were pretty happy with the Raging Bolt deck that you ended up putting together for the Shrouded Fable format. Vigorous head nodding
Yeah. Yes,
Suggesting,
I love it.
yes.
I love it.
So can you tell me about it?
Yeah. It's a Raging Bolt list, everyone. You might notice some things that you don't see in other Raging Bolt lists, or things that aren't there that you do see in other Raging Bolt lists. And as I said, I initially got a list from Cal and it looked nothing like this. I think it's like 15 or 20 cards different.
Yeah.
Every Raging Bolt list at the moment is running a Prime Catcher, Boss, and three Pokemon catchers. We kept with that. But we've got 7 Grass Energy, and we've only got 2 Lightning and 3 Fighting. I think on Eden's list is flipped, so he's running 3 Lightning and 2 Fighting, because the energy count actually doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
So the main thing with this list is that we changed how Raging Bolt functions as a deck. Raging Bolt is known as a turbo deck. We made it not a turbo deck, essentially. It can still turbo, but it's not as explosive as the normal Raging Bolt list. So that's why we're running 2 Iono, and most lists are running 1 Iono. The Iono is really important for this deck. The main reason is the late game Prime Catcher KO on Fairs with Iono is such a strong combo because normally it's Ionoing them to 1 or Ionoing them to 2, and then they have no draw, they have no cards, so you can come from behind. In fact, Eden and I on yesterday, we played in semifinals, and he was up on prizes, and I did the thing. I gusted out the Fez, I Iono'd, and I KO'd it with Sinistcha.
Yep.
If you don't know about Sinistcha, it's a 70 HP single prizer, stage 1. Its first attack is really good as well. It's a single energy. It's put 4 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like, which is insane and wins you a lot of games because Guardy, for example, they go right to the limit. Roaring Moon, if they have to Frenzy Gouging, you already KO it really anyway, but anything like that, the drop can be insane. I had one game where my opponent had a Roaring Moon. The only way for them to take a 2-prize KO was Frenzy Gouging. So I put 3 damage counters on that Roaring Moon so that if they Frenzy Gouging, we would go into sudden death. Unfortunately, they drew their entire deck and set up another Roaring Moon, but that was the idea, and it nearly worked. We're on 1 Charm. I don't like Charm. I think the card is useless. I think we should just be gusting every turn and taking a 2-prize KO. The main thing is that we've gone to 3 Bolts and 3 Ogapons. We don't need to take a turn 1 KO. We're going first into every matchup with this, except for Roaring Moon and Mirror, simply because, we want to be able to actually set up. We want to actually get the attack. I think we've done the maths. You can only get that attack off going second 40 to 50% of the time.
The Sinistcha lets you play that way too, because you're, rather than trying to go for the first KO, you've now built the deck in a way that gives you an extra turn at the end of the game to win by way of attacking the Sinistcha.
Absolutely, yeah, and that does win a lot of games. It also one-hit KOs Charizard, which helps with that. The most niche thing about this deck that I really like is the Poltchageist, the basic. It's 30 HP, and you're going to be like, how can you play a 30 HP Pokemon into a fight where Dragapult and Drago and all of that is going wild? And it's because Poltchageist's ability is insane. When it's on the bench, it can't take damage from attacks or take effects of attacks while it's on the bench. So Dragapult can't hit it. Screamtail, it protects itself. That's why the 30 HP one's better than the 40 HP one.
Yep, for sure.
And yeah, Double Stretcher is just so good. The 7th Grass Energy is so good for consistency. You don't really have any problems finding the second of the Lightning Energy because you have so many ways to get energy. You have double Night Stretcher, you have Earthen Vessels, you have energy retrievals. There's so many situations as well where you can Night Stretcher for Fez and draw again. So if they kill it, you just go, okay, Night Stretcher, bring it back, I'll draw 3. And then late game,
you've been looking for.
Basically the way you need to play the deck, this deck is very weak to Iono. All Raging Bolt decks are extremely weak to Iono. So you kind of have to set up, you have to really plan in advance for the Iono. And on the turn where you know they're going to Iono you to 2 or to 1 or to whatever they're Ionoing you to, there's a few things you need to do. You need to thin out everything you can. You discard as many cards from your hand that you can within reason. You only keep the cards that you need, and you power pad back in double Sada or Sada Boss or whatever you need to win the game. That way, if you get Iono'd, you've got enough ways to do it. And ideally, your energy retrievals and your earthen vessels, not really your earthen vessels, but mainly like your energy retrievals, you don't really end up using them till the late game anyway. Sometimes you do have to use 1 or 2 early. But as long as you've got 1 in deck and some Sadas in deck, the Iono isn't that bad as long as you prepare for it. You have to power pad the turn before Iono, I think, because that's the only way to play it, I think.
Yeah. It's awesome. The Sinistcha gives it a much wider set of options. Now, in saying that Raging Bolt Ogerpon, its singular option, which is attack the thing in front of it, with one of the 2 attackers that are in the deck, and mainly it's Raging Bolt, it's very good at it. It's very, very good. I think about decks in terms of vertical and horizontal power. So when I think of vertical power, I think of a Pokemon like Raging Bolt, which is very good at doing one thing, which is massive damage, and it's very consistent at doing it. So that's when a bad start from a deck like Raging Bolt, or let's say Miraidon as another example of vertical power, that's when it really hurts, because it is not exerting or doing the thing that it's meant to be very good at doing. Deck that's got like a breadth to it, maybe Gardevoir, for example, where it's got a wide set of options. You know, it's not going to be it's not going to be as good as Raging Bolt at doing just 350 damage, but it can do it, but it can also do lots of things. And so it's kind of like when you see those tier lists where it's like an X and a Y axis, and decks sort of fit somewhere on the scale of, like, you know, very, very fast, very, very slow, but also like very strong or weak or whatever. And yeah, this is the very strong fast deck. But playing just gives it a breadth where you could go for a mid-game Sinistcha. You can go for the late game, whatever suits. The Sinistcha was never put in for the reasons we ended up using it for. It was put in mainly for Zard. And it makes the Zard matchup better, but I don't think it makes it hugely better. It just makes other matchups way better. Like the best example I think is Guardy, which was probably a 30-70 before. Maybe not, like, we were playing Vacuum. The only reason we're on Vacuum is, well, in my opinion, is for Guardy. Like, I don't want to lose to Guardy. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'm going to play a Vacuum. Vacuum helps a lot. Before it was just, okay, a Vacuum, kill Curlies, I guess, then kill Gardevoir, but it's still really rough. Now you can play differently. You can Vacuum, you can KO the Guardy, but also you can gust out the Greninja and kill whatever's attacking you with Sinistcha. And because Curse Shock can hit that bench, and sometimes that's really good. Sometimes if they have a lot of damage on something else and they're attacking with another one, you can actually get a 2-prize KO with Sinistcha. And the fact that it hits 210 is just really good, because you can, like, as I said earlier, like the gusting, even early game, you can kill a Squawk really easily. You can kill the Minion. You can kill Rotom with it. Like, all these 2-prize Pokemon that every single person is playing in their decks at the moment, they can all die to Sinistcha, and you don't even need a Sada to set it up. Like, all you need is Tail Dance, attach, and then you can KO. I had an example. I had a situation on Saturday, I think, where I had a really bad start. It was double Sinistcha. And turn 1, I went attach pass. I was going first. They didn't have a great start either, and they left Squawk in the active. I drew nothing except a Teal Mask or something. I was like, I'm going to bench the Teal Mask and Teal Dance and see if I draw an energy. That was a mistake, by the way. Well, it was a mistake at the time. And then I realized it was actually kind of a trap. but it was not one that I planned because they gust killed the. I do 140 with Sinistcha to their Squawk. Then they gust kill the Teal Mask. I can continue drawing cards into my hand and then just use Sinistcha to kill the Squawk on the bench. And I have no 2 prizes in play, so like the prize mapping is fine. But we both go to 4 at that point, but they can only ever take a 1 prize KO. And then the turn after they do that, I can go Raging Bolt, Pheasantipity, Sada, KO, and then it's 2 prize cards to 3. They take a KO, it's 2 prize cards to 1, but it doesn't matter because I can take the last KO.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, if you didn't have the Sinistcha in the deck, you would never be able to engineer that situation with a typical Raging Bolt overdrawn list. So, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that we've talked a lot about the list now, and I thought that, okay, well, we're now past the Shrouded Fable format. I'll put us on screen again. Why don't we talk about, let's just spend like 10 minutes here at the tail end because we've been chatting for quite a while.
For a while, yeah.
I said to you on Messenger before, I was like, an hour, because we just talk about whatever makes sense at the time, and that's fine. What are you looking forward to in Stellar Crown? Let's pick 2 things each. What do you want to play, or what is your like recommended pick for? I've got a league challenge coming up, and it's the new format. What should I play? And then, what are you looking forward to?
Nothing new.
Right. So nothing new is your call. So if you're saying nothing,
well, I'll first say how I feel about it is fear.
Yeah.
I feel fear versus Stellar Crown. It's terrifying me. But I guess in terms of what you should play something that's old, maybe with some like new cards thrown in, something that's tried and tested, because every person and their dog and their best friend and their neighbor and their uncle is going to be trying some weird Terrapagos list or weird Palkia list or just something Galvantula. So if you just play something like, I don't know, play Zard. Zard's a very safe pick. I hate Zard, but it's a very safe pick, right?
Yep.
Something like that. As to what I'm looking forward to, no idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely no idea. I think Area Zero is a pretty cool card, and I think there's a lot of things people can do with that.
Yep.
I think a lot of the decks are probably overhyped, in my opinion. I think of the new decks that are coming, Terrapagos is probably going to be the best. Noctowl is also just a very good card. So that's not really a deck, but
It's a card misplaced.
it's going to be in a lot of decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what I'm gonna play. I'll figure that out. That's a later Xaria problem. That's a next week's.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll figure that out
5
later.
days till Friday. Later.
I do have some lists cooking up, but I will keep them private because they are team lists.
So this is what I do as a streamer. I collect all the eclectic deck builders that are out there looking for other weird deck builders who are streaming like me, and then I just take their ideas and say, this is mine now. I'm gonna play this at an event, and it works for me sometimes.
Yeah,
but
I mean, yeah, we have a very strong team, so Raptor will be doing a lot of testing and working things out, and those lists will probably stay private until Stellar Crown is not the new set, because that's how a team works.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I guess if I've got a tournament this weekend, which I may do, I think I want to sign up for Centurion or Volt, one of the two. Not sure. This weekend, I'm probably just taking some of the lessons from my limited testing recently and playing either Charizard or maybe Miraidon. Probably one of those two I'm going to take.
I mean, I think you've done well with Zard, so I would almost stick with Zard.
I want to keep going with it. I'm probably playing something like Grand Tree in Zard.
The tree!
I love the big tree. Big tree is awesome. Yeah. And something that I was kind of sick of seeing happen, like just trying to play into Reggie, is having a board of my Pokemon getting wiped out. So Grand Tree, it kind of, so the ace spec that I've been leaning on up until now is Hero's Cape, and Hero's Cape is very good against cards like Raging Bolt. It helps me create damage numbers that are very difficult for that deck to set up on and exploit. But if I'm playing something like Grand Tree, it has an effect on your board state which is comparable to Hero's Cape, and it's that it makes your Pokemon suddenly have a lot more HP by way of evolution.
Exactly.
But also it facilitates a very important part of any Pokemon deck, and that's the consistency. And that's what it does. It gives you another route to being able to set up your deck. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Probably going to put Grand Tree in my deck.
And I would suggest like flicking in some cards from the new set and see how you feel about it.
Yeah. Otherwise, Miraidon has been my go-to in order to deal with Charizard's bad matchups. So playing against Regidrago and losing to it enough times has sort of rattled me enough to want to consider the switch. And so yesterday I quickly threw together an Area Zero Miraidon list, and it seems to be going all right. So that's my other option. If I get there at whatever time and I look around the room and I'm like, I'm not feeling Charizard today, I'm going to play where my basic Pokemon have 200 HP. So what I'm looking forward to trying in the format to come, maybe some fun ideas like Hydrapple, because I've got 3 of them now. I pulled 2 from my League Challenge packs. And so I've been picking up little bits and pieces here and there to make the deck. I'd also really want to try to make Galvantula work. I've got a list that did well in a Japanese tournament recently, and I tried it out on stream just before we started chatting. And I mean, it's hard to judge a deck based on one game, but I'm pretty sure that my opponent decided to Alt F4 after the first turn. So early days, but we'll see.
Yeah. It is what it is. We see what happens and we see how it goes.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? All right. Why don't we wrap it up? Is there anything you want to say at the end of this one, Xaria? Maybe shout outs to people who have helped.
Thanks to my family. Thanks to everyone at Raptor. Thanks to my lovely partner who I need to go give love and affection to because I love her. And everyone at Raptor and anyone. Like, I can't thank everyone. I will just say anyone that's helped me, thank you. And thank you for having me on as well.
Oh, you're very welcome. Sorry.
Yeah.
I got plenty of time for our local players here in Queensland and yourself chief amongst them. So thanks for being on. For me, I'll say thank you to my wife for letting me take the Charizard deck. The Charizard deck was hers. So the last time that deck had been played was Melbourne Regionals earlier this year, last year. It's been a while. Whenever Melbourne Regionals was on last, so it was pre-rotation still. It was filled with like old cards. So thank you for letting me borrow the deck, and thanks to everybody who watches me on Twitch. You're all very lovely humans, and just all my friends that put up with my inane natterings about Pokemon cards and just streams of consciousness all the time. All right, well, let's cap it off. Thank you all for being here. I'm sure we'll do this again in future. Thanks for being on, Xaria.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have to go, so I'm gonna go.
Go.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Wow, wasn't that fun?